All right. So I like this one. So we're going to record it. This is
Okay,
some
sorry, I'm still.
Bible study with Jason. We've already done one take at it, and I heard it and I liked it, so I wanted to get it recorded. All right, Jason.
All right, so
This is Bible
unfortunately
study for the
now
world.
yep, you're gonna make me repeat my words, and it's not gonna sound quite so
Hope maybe
natural this time
I
around.
could I
Maybe it
can
will.
I can try at it, and then you can and then I can sound like the dumb student, and you can correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay,
It's
so yeah,
whatever you
let's
want
do
to
that.
do. Okay.
Yep, let's do that.
So
Put it this way. Let me set the scene,
okay.
and then I'll just give you the context in which I mentioned earlier. So I was listening to a talk by Dr. Jeannie Constantinou. I hopefully haven't butchered her name, who I believe is a retired theologian, a professor. I think she was a professor at a Catholic school, I believe she mentioned. And she was doing a teaching on Matthew 16, specifically verse 18. And I tell you, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the powers of death shall not prevail against it. So Dr. Constantinou spent a significant portion of her time on this topic by pointing out what, in her opinion, was the error of the Catholic Church in using this to justify their authority as the sole legitimate church in the world. Obviously coupled with verse 19. And then she proceeded to give her understanding of the Orthodox interpretation of that verse, is that the rock, and on this rock I will build my church. That rock, she pointed out that the Orthodox Church understanding of that rock to be Jesus as the rock that was the rock that brought forth water during the Exodus. And so that, and then I was listening to this argument, and none of it convinced me at all. And what occurred to me that might be relevant was the verses in Matthew 7, which related to let the wise man build his house on the rock. So so that's the context of it. And then Gavin heard me
You,
give my first take, so Gavin will now.
well, I'm fine if you want to keep going. You're doing great.
Yep.
Do you want to keep
So,
going?
all right, I'll keep going then.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
seeing as I grabbed the floor, and I'm not giving it up. So I'll pretend like I want. I'll pretend I wanted you to do it, but in reality, I just wanted to hear my own voice.
I think you're doing great, better than I can do. So keep going.
So so this teaching seemed to me to be relevant because it had to do with a wise man building his house on the rock. And the context of this is everyone then who hear these words of mine and does them will be like a wise man who built his house on the rock. So the building your house on the rock relates to hearing the words of Christ and doing them. And if we go back to Matthew 16, the context, the verse preceding the one where Jesus tells Peter that he is Peter, and on this rock I will build my church. Jesus answered him, "Blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father who is in heaven." So the context here is similar to that in Matthew 7, in that Jesus has just informed Peter that Peter had heard God's words and that he'd uttered them. And then he proceeds to referring to building the church or the house on the rock, which which is very, very similar to the context of Matthew 7. So I believe that the correct interpretation for this verse is, in fact, different to what Dr. Constantino was referring to as the Catholic Church and the Orthodox Church. I believe they're both wrong, and that, in fact, this verse should be interpreted. So in other words, Matthew 16, verse 18 is to be interpreted by Matthew 7, verse, look the things, I can give the right verse. Matthew 7, verse 24. In
Right.
other words, building your house on the rock relates to hearing God's words and doing them. That is how the church is built.
And then you also threw in the part about living stones. I thought that was cool.
Yeah. So we taught by Paul that we are living stones. So is that Paul van der Kley or Paul the Evangelist, Paul of Tarsus? Both of them, in fact, teach us this, because Paul van der Kley's church is, in fact, Livingstone's church. That's really cool. Oh, is it Peter refers to us as living stones, which is even cooler that it comes from Peter. Okay, sorry, I was wrong. Sorry, Paul, you're out. Peter's in.
We have to stay humble.
Yep, and like living stones, be yourselves built into a spiritual house. So I'm suggesting that that is a second way that you look at this, is that you become a living stone when you listen and hear God's words and do them. And then stone by stone, person by person, the church gets built by people who hear God's words and do them.
Amen.
That is the I believe the scripturally correct interpretation of Matthew 16, verse 18, I think it was.
So I have a temptation to keep going with what I had mentioned about God's will versus not God's will, but then I'm also have the temptation to just hit stop recording, because that's good where it's at.
I think stop recording, because my commentary is on that topic was I think hard to hear, so we'll keep that for next time.
All right, now if I can just figure out how to stop recording. Here we go. Bye bye, people.